Hey there, Rosie.
Hi, Dave. Dan,
Hello.
testing my
Hey,
audio.
Dan, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Great, thanks.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Jason.
Oh,
So I'm waiting for a few more people, I think. We have our intrepid chair, so we're good there. Might be hard to understand Greg through his gas mask, but I think we're good there. I think we still need a couple more people to make a quorum, or at least one more person.
It's like it.
There's Mr. Stillings. Hello, is Ed? It's good to see Ed, but Ed doesn't count. Sorry, Ed. Looking for a quorum count.
How come that doesn't count?
He's the overlord.
My feelings aren't hurt. I thought you were going to say you were because you couldn't see me because I'm invisible.
Like I said, he's the overlord.
I haven't shaved for a couple days, so I'm not going to be visible.
Kind of nice to get away with that, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's been such a different world.
Let's see, still waiting. Oh, there's our past chair, Nate.
Chair emeritus.
Our chair emeritus. There we go. Rosie, does that give us a quorum now? 2, 3, 4, 5.
I
You
think,
with Ann. Yep.
yes, with Ann, that gives us a quorum.
Oh,
Like we're just
and we-
missing city. We don't have anyone from the city, but you have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. So
All right.
I see 131. Mr. Chair, you comfortable giving the city another minute?
Might as well, I think. We'll go another minute or two, and then we'll go ahead and call the order and go from there.
Right.
And there we got Rick.
Okay.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 1:31 p.m. We're going to go ahead and begin with roll call. I'm here, Jason James.
I'm here. Actually, I had to find a mute button.
All good. It's a good test for everyone to make sure they know where the mute button is. And Donna,
Present.
Rick Barrett,
Present.
Nate Reiser,
Here.
Jess McNeely,
Here.
Dan Folk, I don't believe we have today. Jeff Ballman,
Jeff
Greg Mays.
indicated he wasn't going to be able to make it.
Okay, thank you, Rick. All right, Greg Mace.
Present.
And Ed Stillings.
Here.
And for MetroPlan staff, I know Jeff said he would be out, but he might be joining us later. David Wessel,
I'm here.
Rosie Ware,
Here.
and I don't believe we have Brianna today.
No, but I do see Dan Gabbio with ADOT is also present.
Here. Though not voting.
All right. Moving through our preliminary general business, is there any public comment at this time?
There is none that's come to my attention.
All right, thank you, Rosie. And with that, we'll move into the approval of minutes from our last meeting on January 27th, 2020. Is there any comment or discussion? All right. And with that, I'm seeking a motion for approval of last meeting's minutes.
This is Jason. I will move to approve the minutes.
And I'll second, Mr. Chair. This is Rick Barrett.
All right, perfect. Motion by Jason James, second by Rick Barrett. With that, those in favor, aye.
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 Aye. Hearing none, motion carries. Minutes are approved from last time. All right. Moving into consent agenda. It looks like we have no items under consent agenda. Rosie, is that correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. All right, and that will take us into our general business. And our first item is the adoption of the coordinated plan. Dave, would you like to take us away on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, let me share my screen. If I can do that and find the,
You look comfortable, Dave.
I am in the comfy chair.
Nice.
So I'm not sure where my. There we go. Here it is. So I should confirm, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, this is a presentation, thank you. This is a presentation to the Coordinated Mobility Council addressing the coordinated plan. This is the Coordinated Public Transportation Human Services plan. And the object of this plan is kind of, as that long title implies, is to see how we can better serve particularly the elderly and disabled populations by coordinating human service agencies with public transit and improving the mobility for those groups. So as I mentioned, we're looking at coordinating services amongst these groups, meeting federal requirements. And the plan looks to identify transportation gaps, strategies, and priorities where these particular populations are underserved. The next major update will be in 2023. This update is a minor update, and we're going to be looking for recommended adoption by the board. The Mobility Council did recommend adoption at their meeting last week. So there are 5 types of gaps: information, temporal, spatial, infrastructure, and human capital that the plan works to address. I'll give you a moment just to look at those, but I think they're somewhat self-explanatory. I will hit on the last one, and that's making sure that we have actually the volunteers and staff to run the programs and the resources available to do so. So information gaps, the vision is to make sure that the community and stakeholders are aware of the options and programs throughout the region. And the goal is to increase education opportunities for resources, including riders and prospective riders. From a temporal consideration, and this is where maybe the hours of operation for either public transit or human services don't meet the needs of those elderly and disabled, to look at affordable and convenient transportation during all hours of the day, and starting with promoting the existing services and encouraging those partnerships to form additional options, especially when fixed route service is not operating. From a spatial perspective, there are physical gaps in the system, and how can we provide affordable and convenient transportation into those areas, and looking at implementing new options. I want to take this moment and really commend Mountain Line and the project manager, Stella Hollander. They're working on a micro transit pilot program in the Huntington industrial area, where there's a number of service agencies located. And this would be kind of a dial-a-ride, enhanced dial-a-ride service that would take people anywhere within a zone from basically the Aquaplex over to Country Club. And then at some key hubs around that would connect them to particularly transit stops, but also to other services. So that's one means of closing that spatial gap. Infrastructure gaps is where we have physical separations, particularly in the pedestrian and bicycle network, to make sure that people can get to and from maybe a vehicular mode of transportation into the services and facilities they need. And then human capital is really looking at expanding that coordination. Some of the things that are happening are things like coordinating training and other activities. So the Coordinated Mobility Council in particular has set priorities. Really, the first priority is to maintain existing programs. The second priority is to improve or expand those programs. And the third priority would be to expand those programs. I'll just give you again a moment to look at these priorities and some of the strategies within them. So that's really the, well, I should go on. The other important part of the Coordinated Mobility Plan is it is really the platform from which grants are awarded. So the grants need to be identified within the plan, or the proposed grants, to be eligible for funding. And so you can see the dates coming up for those. We're in the process of adopting the plan, and we'll be reviewing grants later this spring. You can see some of the funding that's in play here, and this is statewide. And we're in the small area, so $1.2 million available statewide that our local agencies will be competing for. And funds are available for capital and operating and other purposes, but operating is capped at a little less than half of the total available. And then there is some COVID funding also available, again, statewide for small urban areas at just over 200,000. So here's the first year of a 2-year grant cycle. And these are, the Civic Service Institute at NAU and Mountain Line are 2 regular applicants. The NAU runs a senior companion program with volunteers and looking for operating funds to help with cover some of their operating costs and things of that nature. And then you can see many of the programs that Mountain Line runs to really extend mobility and extend the reach of their ADA program, which is required to be within 3/4 of a mile of fixed routes, and this allows them to go beyond that. Something new is website accessibility, really making sure that their website, which has information on schedules and other things, are available to a variety of disabled individuals. Quality Connections is looking at a couple vehicles. That's a pretty standard capital application. So looking for an expansion of the program and a replacement vehicle. Same with Coconino County. And then Hazoni is looking for a number of replacement vehicles. It's not surprising that, if we look at the federal grant total ask in the Metro Plan area is $744,000, well over half of the total statewide. So it's, not everybody's going to get everything they ask for. If you're asking for 2 vehicles, you're probably going to get 1. If you're asking for 4 vehicles, you might get 2. And even Mountain Lions, a number of their requests may be reduced in terms of the amount of funding that they actually receive. So here's year 2. Again, you can see very similar in terms of the types of things that are being applied for. And again, a lower amount. And if things don't get awarded in year 1, there will be conversations between ADOT and the prospective applicants to see if there's still a need in year 2. Sometimes they find that, you know, that replacement vehicle is still operating fine and they need it, but they'll have that conversation and see if they can't roll anything forward into the next year. Don't really need to cover the scoring criteria. But that's the conclusion of the presentation. This year's update, as I said, was minor. Really, all the updates that occurred, we updated the demographics in terms of identifying our elderly and disabled population and other factors, and updated the project list that we just went through in terms of what we're applying for as a region. So what we're looking for today, Mr. Chair, is a motion to recommend adoption of the coordinated plan. This time, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, with that, we'll open it to discussion.
Dave, this is Greg. I was just noticing on some of those tables that the matching was sometimes 50-50 and other. Is that a set amount? It seemed to vary from one group to the next, or those just estimates?
It depends. Yes, that's a good catch on your part. It's I believe it's 80-20 match for capital and 50-50 match for operating. I think that's why you saw variations.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I just have a comment?
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for the presentation, and kudos to Estella, my colleague that represents Mountain Lion, putting this together.
Yes, thank you.
Program, and appreciate that, Dave. I'll share that with her. I guess for me, it's just a really good, very supportive course of the program and the recommendations. It's just a really good reminder, I think, this type of program of the people involved in transportation, because this program focuses on, meeting those basic needs and literally moving people from point A to point B, populations, elderly and disabled. So I just, I think it's a good reminder. This group I know is so focused on capital infrastructure development. I think it's sometimes a good reminder of, why we are creating transportation systems. So that's all I have to say.
It's an excellent point. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
This is Greg again. I was wondering, is there any money allowed, and not that I'm a big fan of it, but for marketing, because some of these programs, like the one at NAU, and I work here and I didn't even know it existed. Is that part of a different bucket of money, or can some of that be used here, and does it even make sense to consider that?
I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of a hard time hearing. Is there any money for what?
Marketing.
Marketing. I don't know off the top of my head if that would be available, although, I see that Mountain Lion is doing some website upgrades. And so certainly making sure people are aware of Dial a Ride and other services, I think is appropriate use of those funds.
Greg, you might reach out to Estella Hollander. I can provide her contact information. She works directly with the stakeholders at NAU. So if you have some thoughts on that, you could probably share them with Estella.
Yeah, I run into her at our Erin has those transportation action team meetings. I occasionally see her in there, but yeah, I'll reach out to her. That'd be great.
All right, is there any further discussion on this item? If not, I believe Dave is looking for a motion.
This is Ann. I move to approve.
Well, then I'll second. This is Greg.
Those in favor? Aye.
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 Those against? All right, motion carries. With that, we will move on to our next item, which is review the draft executive board agenda. Dave, will you be taking this item as well?
Yeah, and I'm going to ask Rosie if you would bring up that agenda. Mr. Chair, we're going to walk through a few items with a brief update and pause on a couple. Rosie will give some highlights on the budget. We have Dan Gabbio here to discuss the Milton and 180 corridor master plan updates. So a lot of this is just to raise awareness, make sure you guys are aware of some of the business going on at the executive board level. So you want to scroll down through general business. I'm sorry. So you've gone a little too far. Can you scroll back up so we can see the okay, here we go. If you scroll down to the general business. So yeah, for our first item is a financial report, and item B is the budget. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Rosie to give you a couple highlights on what's forthcoming. Rosie?
Thanks, Dave. Give me just a second. It's a little harder to navigate when you're presenting. So the financial report is through December 31st, and we just plan to present a few of the highlights, specifically salary and benefits. We anticipate being underspent by approximately 4%. We are on target on operations expenses. Travel has been significantly underspent due to COVID. As for capital projects, we are on track with some of them. Other items have been delayed, and I'm just going to skip down to them. Oh, I could read it right here. The regional transportation plan was delayed. We anticipate to spend a portion of that in this fiscal year, and most of it will be spent in fiscal year 21. Progress on the Milton Railroad underpass is waiting on additional information, and we plan on rolling this funding forward to next fiscal year. And the same is similar for the Lone Tree traffic interchange that also has not started. So here's the report. You can see spending is on target year to date, and what we're estimating at the end of the year, at halfway through the year, excepting only projects. Projects we are definitely underspent for the year. And you can see that in the next pages of the report with a little more detail under, specifically under projects. Are there any questions on this report? I'll move on to the fiscal year 22 budget that we will be presenting to the executive board next week preliminarily. This isn't the final version. Obviously, a lot will change between now and the end of the year. Some notes: staffing is projected to stay constant. Operating should remain close to constant with a little bit. We did make some adjustments for inflation. Jeff did note that it's possible we may reduce office expenses when our lease is up. I don't think that'll happen in fiscal year 22. I think it'll be in fiscal year 23. Yeah, we're in year one. We're 1 year into a 3-year lease. Travel expenses we're budgeting them to remain constant, although considering all the changes in the past year, it's too soon to tell if they will be utilized in the next fiscal year. Projects, of course, are still being finalized and are one of the reasons we won't be asking to adopt the budget until later for a few more months. Looks like in May. And we're anticipating to spend about 280,000 on the RTP, although that of course is subject to the actual costs that come in. Milton Underpass, West Route 66. Oh, a big key point is the Metro Plan mini grant. We're hoping to increase this grant in fiscal year 22 to about, it says 250,000, but I want to say it'll be more like 210,000, something over 200,000. So we will definitely have more money available for the mini grant in fiscal year 22. We have some grants going through us, the 5310 grants, and those are listed as Mountain Line. And then also we're looking for other ways to implement the Lone Tree traffic interchange. And I'll scan down to the budget. It's in a similar format, and we went out 5 years just to see how the cost will change with relatively stable funding, with it being carried forward year to year when it's not used. And I think that covers it.
Great. Thank you, Rosie. I just want to make a couple notes. One is the mini grant. It's a 1-year increase. We'll probably go back to that $50,000 level the following year. And then just a note that our transit planning funds have increased. ADOT, in consultation with the MPOs and COGS, has set a baseline of 45,000, which was already higher than the 38,000 or so that we're receiving, and then another distribution on population. So we'll be receiving just over $60,000 a year in transit planning, which is a pretty important bump. So thank you, Rosie. Any questions for Rosie or for me relative to the program? Okay, well, Mr. Chair, I don't hear any, so.
Yeah, if you'd like to keep going through the
Yeah.
items for the e-board, that'd be good.
Yes, so this is just an amendment to our IGA with Mountain Line. We currently contract with them for personnel management payroll, I should say. And we're looking at expanding their role for grant management, public participation, and procurement services. Procurement is a pretty heavy lift in terms of managing a bunch of grant provisions and other things, advertising, et cetera. Mountain Line has a smooth process in place that will make that a more expeditious and efficient process, for instance. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Any questions on this IGA?
No.
All righty. I'm not hearing any. Mr. Chair, we'll keep rolling. You guys are reading that as we scroll by?
If it's easier for you, you can go through the items and we can have open discussion at the end, but whatever's easiest for you.
We'll just go one by one. It's not taking long. So strategic advance schedule. We'd like some input here. The recommendation based on discussions with the executive board was to push this out till June. But as we've looked at some of our programming, some of our planning efforts, having a direction in April would be much better. Typically, we're submitting our work program in May. And so having guidance from the strategic advance as far as the inputs into that work program is pretty important. So we're recommending moving it to the first Wednesday in April That's the executive board regular meeting. So that would be, I believe that is April 1st. I just want to get TAC input. Does that cause problems for anybody? Is that generally doable?
Dave,
That's doable for me, for Nate.
Okay.
are you asking us to look at our calendars for April 1st?
Yeah, if that's possible, if anybody knows offhand, or if they have the calendar available, if we need to get your feedback later, but if anybody knows offhand, or have their calendars available, give us feedback now. I'd appreciate that.
Does look like there's a Mountain Line TAC meeting on the 1st.
Yes, I just saw that.
Is that, and we'll make sure I've got the date right.
Wednesday, it's the 31st, Dave.
Okay, it's the first, okay, I'm sorry. It's the first Wednesday, and then it's the week after. My apologies.
So that'd be the 7th, April 7th, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, during that time, looks like there's the NACOG TSC meeting at that time. I don't know how many people that'll affect in this group. I will have to be in that one though.
Jason, are you providing planner services to NACOG, or is that, or would you be available for that meeting?
I'd be available for that meeting. I'm not overseeing NACOG.
You don't take that personally, okay?
No, I understand.
Okay, well, it sounds like that's with an important exception, the chair of the TAC. It sounds like that meeting should work. So thank you for that feedback. If we can roll on to the next item. So as you all know, we've been engaged with ADOT and the partners around the table on the Milton Corridor Master Plan. Just looking for an update to the executive board, and Dan Gabio is here. I think it's an important enough item just to give us an update on that and the information he's going to share with the management committee and the board. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn this over to Dan Gabio.
Thanks, Dave. I do have the presentation handy if I'm able to share my screen real quick. Let me try to do that. I'm getting a access deny thing on my screen here. It might be a system preferences issue. Sorry about that.
You want to send it to us real quick and we'll pop it up and you can tell us to advance slides?
Sure, that may be the best way to do it. Let's see here. Just a moment here. Okay, should be something in just a moment there, Dave. Sorry
Okay.
for the wait.
Well, while we're waiting for that to pop up, I'll go ahead and hit on one item. You know, the MPO participates with other MPOs and COGs from around Greater Arizona in the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, and so we'll be appointing an alternate to the council from the board. As far as the RTP is concerned, that scope is out on the street. We are providing some amendments to make sure we meet all of our grant requirements. I want to thank Sally Palmer at ADOT for getting us up to speed on that. But we anticipate a pre-bid conference, I believe, March 8th. But this TAC has looked at that scope, and we're solid on that. And we've had a couple meetings now of the advisory group for that project. And I'll say that they are fully engaged. Really looking forward to working with them. Whoops, wait a second. Here it is. So let me open this up, and I will now share my screen, we think. There it is. And can everybody see that?
Thanks so much, Dave. I appreciate
Sure.
that.
No, I appreciate you being here. So just let me know.
Great. So really, I just wanted to walk you all through this just so you can get a heads up of what the executive board will see, just so that it's not a shocker, but none of this should be. All this information is exactly what you saw back during our January 28th meeting with our final decisions for the recommended alternatives included. So Dave, you can go ahead and advance. I'm going to have you skip some slides here till we get to the schedule right there. So this is where we're at. Green check mark is where we just were at the end of January, where we selected our recommended alternatives for both the US 180 and Milton Road Corridor Master Plan. We did receive consensus from all of our partners, with the exception of we didn't hear back from BNSF, but that's been fairly common lately, so I'm not really surprised there. With that, in our meeting tomorrow, our intent is to really dive into the recommended alternatives with the partners and refine the recommended alternatives. We will come prepared to show some nice graphics to show what the corridor could look like given the constraints. And so we'll have both a typical section and an aerial, and we'll kind of walk through that and with the partners determine which spot improvements we need to discuss and maybe have some follow-up modeling to confirm if we want to include or not. We also have designated which spot improvements we think we could fit in fairly easily given right-of-way constraints and not having any negative impacts to operations. And then there are some alternatives where ADOT will recommend that we would not include given the constraints that we have within right-of-way. And so with that, that's what we'll review with our project partners tomorrow to start that process. Thanks, Dave. Again, this is background information. Everything else in this presentation you've seen before, so we could kind of skim through this, Dave, and I'll let you know if there's a spot where we need to stop. This is the No Build Plus as we have it online today for US 180. And again, what we anticipate is that most of the improvements that you see on there in the top row where it says spot improvements are likely pretty straightforward, that won't require too much discussion. Some of the potential spot improvements that we show on the bottom we'll be focusing our discussion on for US 180, but that's the draft version of the US 180 No Build Plus, which again is online. Go ahead and move forward. And then these were just a review of all the alternatives that we looked at as a group, the analysis, and then our final recommendation there. So I'll walk through that with the executive board who may not be as familiar with it, but all that information is verbatim what you saw before. Again, with our recommendation of the No Build Plus for US 180. Okay, and then as we get into Milton, we kind of rinse and repeat. We'll go through the alternatives that we evaluated. You can continue forward. Thanks, Dave. And then we have just a review of the traffic operations, the tier 3 analysis results, some of the concerns we brought forward in our decision making, the public results that we all saw, And then you can continue forward, Dave. Our final recommendation, which is the no-build hybrid for Milton Road. And the description there, as we reviewed, a note on the bottom that the final spot improvements will be refined in spring. That's what we'll be initiating tomorrow and continuing into April to help refine and finalize the specification of the no-build hybrid. One point of clarification, as you all know, is we're going to look to identify and refine the no-build hybrid in 2 phases. So phase 1, which could likely be achieved in the short term, is what we imagine we could do primarily within existing right-of-way with some exceptions. Phase 2 will be the more long-term vision for Milton Road, where we'll come up with a specification that addresses the various desires for each of the features within the no-build hybrid alternative that could be achieved as part of the redevelopment process. And with that, I think that'll pretty much wrap up the presentation that I'll provide both to the management committee tomorrow and the board next Wednesday, I believe. So with that, are there any questions or comments as far as what we're sharing, the content we're sharing, what we're going to be doing tomorrow, or for the duration of the master plans?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question for Dan and probably Nate as well. Granted, we're not through this process yet, but we do have a working recommendation. We do have a fairly significant pavement preservation job coming up on Milton. Is there any possibility of amending that project to meet some of these objectives? And specifically, I'm thinking about the 6-foot sidewalks, which I believe are recommended in the alternative. And just wondering if that's even a possibility.
So I'll start, and Nate, you could follow up with anything, but I think it'll likely be a matter of timing and partnering opportunity. So a lot of the enhancements that we'll likely define for the corridor master plan would go beyond the scope and budget that ADOT will do for the pavement preservation project. And so with that, it may take some partnership with any of our partners to be able to complete that. Also, challenges with just the timing of the design and construction, since the design is getting further and further to completion. So again, it's just a matter of timing and funding availability. It certainly would be a great opportunity if that could be achieved. I'm sure everyone would appreciate that, and it would definitely help everyone feel like we've, partnered on this from cradle to grave, and it would be nice to see the output of all of our effort. But there certainly would be some challenges in trying to achieve that. Doesn't mean it couldn't be achieved. Nate, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. So from my understanding, the project is going on 90% design right now. So anytime adding scope of work after 60% is very difficult to do.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
Doesn't mean you can't ask, but I think it's going to be difficult adding scope to that project at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you. I kind of expected that answer, but thought it was worth exploring. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Dan, for the presentation.
Thank you, Dave.
Mr.
Any
Chair,
other questions?
yeah, I have a quick,
Go ahead.
sorry, I can't. Who's talking?
Go ahead, Ann. You're good.
Actually, it's related to Dave's question, which, I definitely think was a good, and I understand where the process is at now on that maintenance project. Probably the ship has sailed, but just a general question for Dan and Nate about ADOT process. When you are, for example, when I found out about that maintenance project from the ADOT project manager that's based in Phoenix, he reached out to stakeholders just in that early design phase. And I did bring that up, about, hey, there's this other project happening. What's the relationship? Can there be some coordination? Because of the Milton planning process. And, you know, at the time it was sort of a siloed effort, right? And so what would be in the future when ADOT's planning, maintenance, and other types of efforts to also be looking at these planning pieces so that we could potentially be talking about partnerships early? Like, when would you recommend? I mean, is it through this Metro Plan effort, or how would we coordinate better in the future on those?
Well, I will say this is just kind of tossed up with the timing issue. You know, preferably the master plans would have been done much earlier and the recommendations would have been available for direct use in this project, but unfortunately, the schedules didn't line up. But I am included on the stakeholder list for that project. So I do a lot of cross coordination to see where they're at. But it's really just a matter of timing, unfortunately, with this. But we do try to have cross coordination. Typically, it's much easier because the plan is done first and then it goes into project development. In this case, there was the pavement conditional need, which couldn't wait for the master plan.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions on this one?
I will say, I believe there's a little over $1 million of sidewalk improvements going into that project, but no widening.
Thanks, Nate.
Right.
All right, Dave, back to you.
Rose, you want to bring the agenda back up, please? So I mentioned the RTAC appointment of the alternate there. So next item. State legislative and funding update. I believe, Rosie, is this where Jeff wanted to show that video? I think we have time. Is that right?
Yes, I think so. Give me just a second to pull it up.
Okay, thank you. So Jeff couldn't stand being away entirely, so he made a record of himself. And he's going to give a presentation on some of the legislative and funding update. So we think.
Can you see Jeff's face? Just want to
No.
make sure you're on the right screen. Oh, okay.
Nope, still looking at the draft agenda.
Okay, now do you see Jeff?
Now we see Jeff.
All right. Well, let me know if the sound works too. Can you hear him?
It's very
Does it play?
garbled.
I do not.
Well, it only played for 2 seconds.
Okay, let's try it. I'll try it for a few more. I just want to check in. I don't want to play the whole thing if you can't hear it. So I'll try it for a few more seconds.
Yes, I'm with Dave. It's garbled.
Still garbled? Okay. I feel like there should be a way for us to play a video.
If it was Teams, there's a button that needs to be clicked that says share computer audio, but I don't know about Zoom.
Okay, there we go. And I did not click the button. So let's try, I'm gonna try one more time. I think it should work now.
Good morning. I
Excellent.
appreciate you all being there for the TAC meeting today. I just wanted to give a quick update on what's happening with state funding and legislative action. A lot has happened in the past few weeks. Metro Plan is working with the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council and we are looking at doing a statewide request. We also submitted a letter from Councilmember Salas, we being Metro Plan, to Senator Rogers asking for a special budget appropriation of $5 million. And that's one thing that's out there. But I really think the bigger picture I want to let the TAC know about is an approach that gets all small urban and rural councils of government, MPOs, together. There's 10 of us to make one request of the state. And the idea is that we would ask, potentially the number we're looking at is $30 million. That would be divided per capita. We're running the numbers now to see how much that money would be for each area. And I can get that information to you at the next meeting. What we would then do is put together our own local projects. We would attach them to the total number that we're looking to receive here. And then we would make the case with the other small urban and rural COGs so that, you know, together it's really just one joint request from Greater Arizona. We're all in agreement, and we're asking for funding for infrastructure. I think it's a great approach. I think that Kevin Adam and the other leadership of the directors at the small MPOs and COGs has been great. This is something new that we haven't done before. We're not going to be able to do it this year. There isn't time. However, it's something that we can do year after year and just update and consistently make our case. And as most of you know, that's what it takes, time after time of making our case and staying in there consistently. So I'm very optimistic about the future of this project. It's something that just came up as an idea really in the past 4 weeks and started to be fleshed out. And I'll keep you posted. So thank you.
So to the degree that I can, I'm happy to answer any questions people might have about state funding.
Mr. Chair, Dave, I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
First of all, that was a great idea that Jeff had to provides a little extra punch to have a video. What did he, in terms of Metro plans out of the 30 million, what was the priority we pitched, that we Metro Plan pitched?
I don't think that there was a project list submitted by anybody at this point. As Jeff noted, this was kind of a first pitch effort, really came in, you know, after the deadline. And so as they kind of run the numbers and refine the amount coming to each agency or area, we'll select projects to fit those numbers.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Seeing nothing else, I think the next item is federal legislation. There is a distribution of some COVID, the RTP, I'm sorry. I think I gave an update on the RTP. Again, it's on the street and we have been meeting with the advisory group. It's going to be really critical that we get a top flight consultant on board. I think it's the big thing. So I really don't have anything else on the RTP at this point. Yeah, this the scroll on through the RFP. Then federal funding, again, I don't think there's a lot here. The Congress is debating the next COVID bill. There could be some infrastructure included in that. The authorization bill is on its, on an extension, a continuing resolution that expires at the end of September. The Biden administration seems to be really focusing a lot on infrastructure and would take a more, I would say, traditional approach than former administration. And do anticipate that with the focus on climate change, to see maybe a shift in focus more towards transit, ped and bike, and alternate fueled vehicles, maybe even automated vehicles if they're perceived as being climate friendly. So really don't have much else to add to the federal update. Yeah. Can go to the next item. So there was a request made by board member Salas. Councilmember Salas used to work at the Chamber of Commerce, and while she was there, Flagstaff MPO had engaged with the Chamber and their Northern Arizona Manufacturing Partnership, NAMP, to have them serve as a freight advisory board. She was asking what the status of that was. And basically, it's in hibernation. There was an update done to a freight study in 2004, and an update done in 2014 that said, yeah, things had returned to kind of pre-Great Recession levels. And in the interim, we had hopes for an intermodal yard at Camp Navajo. The recession hit, and that program fell through. And in fact, Camp Navajo was removed from the enhanced use lease program altogether. When we had determined with Akona that freight levels had returned to quote unquote normal, we looked at trying to establish a freight advisory board using NAMP as that board, and entered into an MOU with the chamber. Made an effort at getting a few shippers on board to test some ideas that really did not bear fruit, could not recruit enough shippers to do that. And it was really just to seek some quotes for collective freight. And then we got into the next cycle for the RTP, and then right on the heels of that, the next election cycle for the transportation tax. So we really have not revisited the freight advisory board. It is an item that the executive board may want to take up, or TAC members at the strategic advance. Certainly with COVID, we've seen a lot of internet shopping and a lot of demands on shipping. And we've also, at the end of last year, the Department of Defense, in the defense bill, the DoD transferred 3,000 acres from the Department of Defense to the Arizona National Guard at Camp Navajo for industrial development. And so those pressures and opportunities seem to be right on the horizon again. And so that might be something that we wish to take up. Certainly could be part of the focus. It will be part of the focus, but could be a little heightened part of the focus of the RTP, specifically as we focus on economic activity and transportation related to that. Happy to answer any questions here. Okay. Next item. I think that might actually be at or near the end. That is the end.
That's the end.
So, Mr. Chair, that is the review of the executive board agenda. Wanted to bring to your attention the things that the board is talking about. Thank you guys for your time and your questions. But I believe that brings us to the end of the business, and see if there's items from the chair or the rest of the TAC that we might address.
Well, thank you, Dave. And just I want to give the opportunity if anyone else had any questions for the e-board agenda. I know we asked them along the way, but was there any further discussion on that item? All right. Well, perfect. Like you said, Dave, we're kind of moving to the end. Jeff is still not here. We don't know if he'll be able to join us. Dave, did you have anything that he wanted to bring to us for his items from the executive director, or you think we're good for today?
Not of which I'm aware. I'll see if Rosie was aware of anything.
I'm not aware of anything. Thanks.
Okay. I think we're covered there on items from the director.
Okay. And then that takes us to future agenda items. Anything we need to add there?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple items to consider.
Go ahead, Ann.
I chatted briefly with Martin Ince over email right before this meeting, and would like to consider bringing forward just for TAC informational highlights, the Mountain Line City Bike Ped 5339 grant partnership project, if you will, the recently awarded grant that the city is identifying the priorities right now. But more to bring it just to TAC Metro Plan's team, to see how the project's coming together, just the framework of the partnership as we go through that process. So it probably wouldn't be for a couple of months until the city's kind of identified, the projects that we might want to pursue, and then the funds would get obligated. So anyway, I just wanted to, that might be a good kind of opportunity just to share with this group. That'd be one agenda item to consider. And then a second one was actually something that kind of relates to what Jeff had in his earlier with the federal or the strategic seeking coalition funding aspect to his other presentation. But Kate actually thought it might be helpful to have, and maybe this is also related to what Jeff was talking about, the surface transportation reauthorization status, kind of an update on like a forecast of what's coming down the line with that, where that sits and how our region could prepare to take advantage of that. Again, could be very much related to aspects of Jeff's video, but also, again, maybe what aspects should we as MetroPlan be supporting or not supporting in some of the draft bills. So that was something Kate thought might be a good conversation for TAC.
Perfect, thank you, Ann.
Yeah, we'll be sure to add those. I think we could probably do some side-by-side comparisons of positions by organizations like the Association of MPOs, the National Association of Regional Councils, and APTA, the American Public Transportation Association, just to see where some of those organizations stand. And then we'll see if Jeff would like to, maybe we can invite Kevin Adam to provide an overview. But yeah, it's definitely time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone have anything else to add for future agenda items? All right. Moving along into closing business. It looks like we don't have any items from the board. Is that correct, Rosie?
That's correct.
All right. Our next scheduled TAC meeting will be March 24th, same time, 1:30 p.m. via Zoom again. And before I adjourn, is there any other comments or discussion from any members of the TAC or anything else we need to discuss today?
Yeah, this is Ed Stillings. I was hoping we could circle back to one of the early items really quick. The strategic advance, Dave.
Yes.
You'd mentioned April 1st.
I think April 7th, and then correct it to April 7th. Yeah.
Okay, you meant the 7th. Yeah, because we're doing our work plan review on the 1st.
Yeah.
I think you were so excited about that's why that date was stuck in your head.
Just always so look forward to seeing you and your crew.
But it'll be our first one as MetroPlan. It's exciting.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, so you're looking at the 7th. That's what I.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? All right, well, with that, thankfully, we were not squashed for time today and proceeded in a nice timely manner. And I will adjourn this meeting at 2:33 p.m. and I will see you all next time.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.